All right, we'll talk to you about Mary Dyer. That's the article that I picked. Her story begins 1636, 1638 with Anne Hutchinson. Um, Anne Hutchinson and her party were considered a part of a antinomian faction. This was a problem in the Puritan state because Puritan state thinks it's responsible for the spiritual welfare of all of its members. Hutchinson's theology had radical social implications and threatened the social order of the Puritan state, which they weren't going to allow. So they basically put Anne and her friends on trial and ended up banishing them out of the state of Massachusetts or the colony. At that point in time, Dyer moved to Rhode Island shortly before going in 1652 to England. And during that key year, it was the Quaker emergence. The key feature of the movement was the prominent role of women among the so-called publishers of truth. So she basically became a Quaker while she went back to England. And then in the fall of 1657, Dyer returned to Rhode Island, landing in Boston, the site of her banishment 20 years prior. And she was immediately picked up and charged for being a Quaker, and along with two other missionaries from England, William Robinson and Marmaduke Stevenson, because Massachusetts in 1658 had the anti-Quaker laws. Like I said, it's Puritan states, no Quakers. So they were banished upon pain of death. All right, so that's the second time she was banished. She immediately left and went to Rhode Island from Massachusetts to be with her family. Then in the summer of 1659, Dyer returned to Massachusetts to visit Robinson and Stevenson, who had recently been arrested again. They had they were apprehended without bail for 2 months, stayed in harsh conditions, but eventually they were all released under pain of death again. However, this time Robinson and Stevenson decided to stay in Massachusetts and try to go against the grain and do what they wanted to do. Dyer obviously left, but then she went back in October the same year, returned to Massachusetts to visit her friends, Robinson and Stevenson, and then they were all three basically caught, tried, and sentenced to death. Then on October 27th, 1659, all three were taken to the scaffold. Dyer was forced to watch the hanging of her partners and even ready for execution herself. She was literally on the scaffold. From what the reading said, it had the rope around her neck. Then in the turn of events, Dyer stood on the ladder, and she was basically released between the pleas of her family and the public, unwilling to execute a woman at that time. It was kind of taboo. And then a few days later, she was actually carried out of town. Puritans stated that she was spared because public resistance to the idea of executing a woman. So Dyer spent the winter in Rhode Island, and on May 21st, 1660, she re-entered Massachusetts for the third and final time. Fourth time. She was jailed and tried, during which she admitted to being a Quaker and that she spoke the words of the Lord spoke in her, thus following in the footsteps of Anne Hutchinson. On June 1st, she was led to the Boston Common and hung as the only woman ever executed as a Quaker. So, in my opinion, she did more than Anne Hutchinson. She died for her beliefs, and during the research, her letters that she wrote while she was in prison, from what we know now, were written with the intent of being published, and they were actually edited by Edward Burrough, because he said that it was too harsh and her language was too harsh. And that is significant because it reflects the change in Quakerism from a charismatic movement to a religious institution, from individuals to the corporate form, from radical to respective. These texts that were disseminated and ended up having a profound political religious impact make its way all the way back to England, to Charles II, who, once he got these texts that were published and with a letter from Burrough, decided to ban executions in Massachusetts at that time. No more. In my opinion, Dyer did a lot more than Hutchinson, and she died for it, died for her faith. And I think it was a step by step. In her mind, she knew what she was doing, writing the letters, the things she said. She knew all this stuff was going to be written down, published, and that gave her immortality because we're still talking about her today. We should be talking about her more so, in my opinion, than Hutchinson, just because of what she did. She followed through with it, and she was a martyr. So I enjoyed the reading, learned a lot, and was very interested, especially about the Quakers. So there you got it, and y'all stay safe out there. Wash your hands.